Well, let's pick up on this story with three colleagues from the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Susan Delacourt is a columnist with the Toronto Star. Bob Fife's the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. And John Ivison is a columnist with the National Post and Parliamentary Bureau Chief for Postmedia. Good to see you all. So we have the Prime Minister in question period saying his government has no intention of licensing the news media. Steven Guilbeault, after the interview he gave on the weekend, made a point of coming out today. We saw that where he said, look, I came out, I'm a big boy, made the decision myself to clarify this. We're not going to license the media. Is that the end of this?
No.
Why not?
I saw my mailbox was still getting ads from the likes of Ontario Proud, etc., saying this is the Trudeau government trying to take control of the media or trying to buy the media. And as all of us know, ever since this government, I think for good reasons, I will say, I'll give you my address at the end of the show to send the hate mail. I think for good reasons, there are arguments about trying to do something for the news media in Canada or try to sort of fix what's wrong with it. But this is a fraught, troublesome territory, and Mr. Guilbeault, newcomer to cabinet, newcomer to politics or elected politics, walked right into one of the most polarizing, nasty debates on the in the Canadian political world, which is, does the government have a role in helping the media?
John?
Yeah, exactly. I rest my case. No, but it's true. I mean, 2/3 of Canadians don't trust politicians. That number rises for Conservatives. These conspiracy theories about the government's critics being bought off are out there, and this guy just fueled them. You know, it was a rookie mistake from a rookie minister. Obviously, I mean, I agree with Susan that the thing that's out there at the moment, the media bailout, is a tax credit for companies that hire journalists. Without that tax credit, many companies would be in trouble at the moment. But obviously, it is a bone of contention for people. And by suggesting you're now going to regulate the media, I mean, Trudeau stood up and said that the thing clearly states it's going to exempt news companies. It doesn't. It's not very clear at all. There is an exemption word used in there.
If he makes that case, if it seems they're trying to walk this line, Bob, between media versus news, right? There are media companies who don't do news; they do other things. Does that wash with you?
Well, first of all, in case of Mr. Guilbeault, he was sort of this rising star in Quebec. Everybody to watch this guy. He's really smart, and he is, but he's not that smart. Clearly, he stepped into it. He was deeply embarrassed by it. He didn't like the questions he got from journalists. He kind of got offended that they would ask him the questions, that he was backtracking. So I think he's taken a hit, and we'll see how he performs because the shine's gone off this guy now. Maybe he's not as smart as he thinks he is, or we think he is. In terms of the whole issue of
on the policy side, I mean,
on the policy side, the government doesn't know where they're going on this, and I don't think anybody does, to be honest.
Well, we know where they're not going now. Yeah. It's wherever this report recommended. They can't afford to touch this report now.
Right. Or I mean,
people do not want government involvement in the media, and the Conservatives have jumped on that right from the get-go. Media companies themselves are struggling with how do we get help from the government without making it look like
we're beholden to them.
They were beholden to them, and that there are we're tied to them, and that's a difficult thing. So somehow we have to work it through the tax system.
So yeah, so the questions they were trying to answer, two of them are, to me, are very legitimate. One of them is the CBC's role, and this panel recommended that the CBC move away from advertising over 5 years, which I think most people would say that that's probably where the CBC should be, not running Family Feud and other programs like it, chasing advertising dollars. The other is the fact that
they're also competing with news organizations who are trying to make when we don't get any money, we get it from people supporting us, and the CBC has more journalists here in Ottawa putting stuff out on the web that is free that makes a big difference to the three of us who work for news organizations who want to
trying to monetize that,
right,
and running up against a publicly subsidized operation.
A $1.3 billion.
Just to finish this out, the other area I think where parasitical organizations like Facebook take our content and put it on their platforms, and they make money from the platform. This report actually recommended that there be some kind of regulation which ensured that Facebook and other companies like it paid the content providers. So there are genuine questions to be asked here, but I just don't think they found the right answers.
Yeah, what I always say when people have asked me about this, I say it's simple. Journalism has two jobs in this democracy. One is a business, one is a public service. We can do our public service job. We do have to do it, holding the government accountable. That's what the business model is struggling because of Facebook and Google and the internet generally. So the government is struggling with how to keep the public service role of journalism alive without appearing to get involved in its business. And that's where we are now. And Mr. Guilbeault, with his remarks, sort of played right into the worst fears of journalists alike and the media critics, which is this is the government trying to buy good coverage.
Especially in the world that we're facing now, where everybody is out there saying this is fake news.
Right.
Legitimate news organizations that have actual editors that check over everything and make sure that the material is factually right, and that we have ombudsman if you can complain to. We got people that are saying if they don't like the story, it's fake news. This is a very frightening period of time that we're going through.
Let me ask you about, let's talk about the Conservative leadership race. And over the weekend, Peter Mackay, even though no money was required, no signatures were required for another few weeks here. Over the weekend, Peter Mackay pays the whole freight, $300,000 right up front, and has all the signatures, 3,000 signatures he needed. What's the message he's sending?
It reminds me of is Paul Martin, when he entered the leadership race that he was going to win. He showed up with all the delegates signed every riding in Canada. It's a show of strength. It's it's to intimidate his opponents and say that this is going to be more of a coronation than it is going to be.
Does it work, Bob?
It's so far it is working. You notice that almost every day he's got 2 or 3 endorsements, if they're not from Conservative MPs, sitting Conservative MPs, or ones who are formerly being Conservative MPs or had run for the party. So he's got a smart strategy here, which is to try to frighten people off with I've got the money, and look at the endorsements I'm having all the time. And he's also out there constantly now in the Twitter world and social media world, putting stuff out.
Yeah, he was out there today, John, actually pulling back a tweet or playing down a tweet from his own site, his own verified site, from somebody in his campaign who had criticized Justin Trudeau's $800 expenditure on yoga courses and lessons while he was running for the Liberal leadership. Peter Mackay says, look, I didn't see it. I don't agree with that. I want to raise the tone of the campaign, so that's not the kind of thing I want.
That's kind of a sign of confidence, I think. I mean, you wouldn't do that if you were pretty nervous about your own performance. I think he does feel slightly relaxed, maybe even complacent that he's running away with this. I think we'll still see another candidate or two coming in. I think John Williamson is serious about doing this, and it's not just him and a couple of guys in his riding. He's got some serious people who are looking at a campaign, whether he could be the guy who could unseat Mackay. But again, another Easterner. There's nobody from the West.
Well, he's got to get $300,000 too. That's
tough to get.
John Baird's name keeps coming up. But I think he keeps saying no, and everybody around him keeps saying you got to do it. Now, if he came in, that would be a formidable race, because he is bilingual. He's a natural politician. He's had many senior portfolios as well. He'd give Peter a real run for his money.
Okay, let's finish on this. Later in the week, the Prime Minister heads to Africa to try and shore up Canada's bid for a seat on the UN Security Council, temporary seat in 2021, up against Ireland and Norway. Is this bid in trouble?
I've been assuming that the bid was in trouble for a while now.
And what does that mean to Justin Trudeau, with all his previous pronouncements about Canada being back, if they lose this bid?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Ireland and Norway are in their we're in far ahead of things. Canada got to it late. You didn't hear a lot about it in the first mandate. It seems like kind of a last-ditch bid to show they were serious about what they said, to say we gave it a good try. But I think they must, or at least everything I'm hearing, I'm not tied to the United Nations or anything like that, but I'm hearing that it's not Canada's turn.
John?
Well, the Governor General, when it's getting desperate times, because apparently the Governor General was enlisted to whisper in the ear of visiting new ambassadors. Trudeau going to Africa suggests, it's not as if there are not important things going on elsewhere in the world, but there are 54 African countries out of 190. Some of them are French-speaking, so you would think that Canada might have an advantage there. And Canada does spend quite a lot of money in Africa. I think it was the Foreign Affairs Minister was saying we've spent $1.6 billion in Mali over the last few years.
But
we've largely ignored Africa.
And our development budget is down around 0.3, and
joke.
Ireland's committed to get to 0.7, which is the UN standard. And Norway's at 1.
Norway's is guaranteed. Ireland's probably going to beat Canada easily. I mean, look at what the problems we have. China's mad at us. We've done very little in Africa, and a lot of Africans have complained about that. Saudi Arabia is mad at us. So what do you think those Arab countries are going to do? We have no presence at all in South America. That's just been forgotten. So I think we're going to have a very, very difficult time winning this, and it's going to look very bad for the Prime Minister because he made a big deal when Stephen Harper lost the UN seat. When you let us in, we're going to get that seat back because Canada's back.
Maybe not just yet. We'll see what happens. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you.